So let's talk reading, race, and responsibility. The last couple months, there have been some massive headlines as far as just horrible acts that have been committed. Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd being the most recent. And it has brought a lot of racial issues to the foreground, which is really good. However, for a lot of people who are minorities, they would say, yeah, but we just happened to catch some heinous acts, some horrible atrocities on camera, but there are all of these issues going on every single day. This is just a daily part of life. And I went back and forth as to make some sort of video about this. I don't know that there's any clean way to talk about race in the US. If I don't make a video, then it could be me ignoring issues that are going on. If I do make a video, it could be pandering and self-centered. Either way, I know that for myself, I had to, and I say I had to, I didn't have to. I should be thinking about my own part in a lot of this oppression and a lot of just the things that are going on every single day, and what is my role, what's my responsibility in that. And for the most part, I would say in my life, I have been inactive as far as actually doing something to combat the injustices that minorities face every single day. In the past, I have laughed at racist jokes. I've told racist jokes before. I've also not laughed at racist jokes and told people to stop telling them. I have done little as far as allying with minority brothers and sisters and just fighting systemic racism. I've sat on my butt because I can. It doesn't affect me, which is my privilege. So I thought, okay, I'm doing these videos. I love reading. I love writing. And so as far as my reading goes, when I'm looking at my shelves, a lot of my books, the majority of my books are white men. And so one thing that I can do is to start to read more books and really focus on reading more books from authors who don't look like me, who don't come from my background, who don't have my perspective on the world. And in order to broaden my horizons, in order to gain new perspectives, in order to get out of my bubble. And I think this is super important. I think education, I think just becoming aware of different perspectives and different life situations is key in helping to understand issues that are going on, to form empathy with individuals. I mean, the first and foremost is to just have friends and be in community with people who aren't like you, who aren't like me, so that when something happens, it's not just an issue happening over here to these people, but it's happening to people I know and care about. But I think reading and education can go a long way towards that, because I'm a white man. That's how I was born. I was born into a certain situation. I was born into a certain family. I was born into a certain income level of my family. And that's it. If it's just in my bubble, that's the perspective I know and can identify with. And so reading, though, and I've talked about this other videos, reading gives you the opportunity to encounter voices and lives and perspectives, and to enter into the shoes of other people in different times and different places and different circumstances. And so I do think it's absolutely massive when I can read about someone's experience to say, oh, I have not experienced that before myself, and now I can see a little bit into what it's like for someone else. That being said, I read an article where there was a black person saying, you know, when things like this happen, when horrific issues happen racially in this country, white people read articles and they read books. And that's all they do. And that was convicting, that, oh, it's easy to read a book and say, oh, wow, now I know, now I understand. Which is not the truth. It's not true. And also, the main point was, reading a book doesn't change things. Reading a book, if there's no action with it, means nothing. reading articles and being well read and well versed, if it doesn't change what you do or how you interact with people, then there's no point. And I think one of the best illustrations, it's a strange one, but Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain is a basketball player. He was 7'1" or 2", super athletic. He scored 100 points in a basketball game once. 100 points, which is just, it's a record. Professional basketball, it's absolutely incredible. But what was more important in that game was that he shot 32 free throws. A 7'1" guy. 7'1" guys don't shoot free throws well, especially back then. And he hit 28 of 32 free throws in that game. What's even more impressive is that he normally hit 50% or less than 50% of his free throws. He was a bad free throw shooter, but he hit 87% of his free throws that night. And he did so because they'd been working on his free throws, and they had him change his style to granny shot. He was shooting underhanded granny shots, and he made 28 of 32. It improved his free throw percentage a whole ton of a lot. And then he stopped shooting free throws like that. He was hitting 87% of his free throws shooting underhanded, and he stopped. In his career, he was a 50% free throw shooter. And you would ask, why in the world would you do that? He was presented with all the data. He was presented with massive amounts of evidence that shooting underhanded would really help him. It would be beneficial to his livelihood because he made money playing basketball. And yet, he stopped and quit because it made him look like a sissy. He was teased by other players. He thought it made him, girls shoot underhanded, which I don't know that they do, but he felt foolish and he felt uncomfortable shooting underhanded, and he was teased about it. And so his thought process was, I'd rather make 50% of my free throws and look normal than shoot underhanded and look stupid and make 87% of my free throws. The point being is this: even if I read, even if I become learned and educated about all the racial issues going on in this country and have been going on for the last 300, 400 years in this country, if I'm not learning about this with a sense of humility, with a sense of openness, the thought process that as a human, I don't know everything. Could it be that I am wrong? Could it be that I'm mistaken? Could it be that my perspective isn't the correct one? If I'm not reading, if I'm not learning with that kind of mentality of humility, then it doesn't matter. You could present me with every anecdotal story. You could present me with every person who suffered. You can present me with all the historical details and facts that I learn, and it's not going to change anything that I do. And I think that was the point of this article. So my encouragement to you is, one, if you don't have friends who are minorities, become friends with minorities. Become friends with people who don't look like you, who don't come from the same situations, because I think that's the number one way that we can start to empathize and spur us to change. It's easy to dislike or dismiss the other. It's easy to dismiss an idea or a group of people. It's very hard to dismiss someone that you know personally. You know their name and you've interacted with them. It's hard to hate someone that you know, unless it's family. But when we are reading, I encourage you to read. I encourage you to get outside of your bubble, but do so with a humble heart. Do so seeking truth. Do so saying, I might be wrong, and I want to know more. I want to understand better, and I want to take responsibility. And when we talk about privilege, I said privilege earlier in the video. Privilege simply means that because I was born the way that I look, I have never been hindered or oppressed or held back because of the skin color that I have. It doesn't mean that I'm racist. Doesn't mean that you're racist because you have privilege, because you're white privilege. Doesn't mean you're racist, doesn't mean you're bad. But what it does mean is that you have never been hindered, held back, or suffered because of your skin color. And I grew up in a trailer park until I was in the middle of grade school. So it doesn't mean that you've never had a bad life. It doesn't mean that you've got a perfect life or you're rich. It means you've never been hindered or held back because of your color of your skin. And because of that, I now have a responsibility to do something to help my brothers and sisters. And that's as much for me as it is for anybody watching this. And so please get outside of your bubble. Please get outside of your perspective, even if you think it's right. Try to hear other perspectives. Try to find another viewpoint and be open and be humble as you're doing this. As always, my name is Mark Taylor. Until next time, keep reading and know that you're more valuable than you could possibly imagine.